Hey, what's happening, everybody? We are now officially streaming live. Excuse me. It's Robert Phoenix. I feel like rocking the microphone or something. It's an Aquarius New Moon, right? I could be like eccentric tonight. Hey, everybody, what's happening? It's Robert Phoenix here. Welcome back for another edition of Sunday Night AstroLive. Hey, tonight we're going to get into the stars. That's right. We're going to do the stars, destiny, your cosmic future, according to your present self. So I'm glad you could all be here and join us tonight on Sunday Night AstroLive with my good pal Jasper, the astrological cat, right here, broadcasting to you live from the Hill Country. And then, oh, look, we have a guest. It's another one of our feline friends. It's Rosie. Well, hello, Rosie. Do you have anything you want to say to the boys and girls out there in YouTube land? I'm sure she has plenty to say. It'd be kind of fun to do a whole show like this now tonight, wouldn't it? Kind of, you know, Aquarian groovy, baby. What do you got to say? Anything? Anything you want to say? You made your entrance. What about you? You have anything to say? Oh, cats got their tongue. Isn't that right? Okay, well, here we are. I'm trying not to watch the score of the 49er game. I'm doing my best not to watch the score of the 49er game. By the way, hats off to the Cincinnati Bengals and Sagittarian Joe Burrow knocking off the Kansas City Chiefs. Yes. I used to be a Pat Mahomes fan. He's a Virgo. He was a good kid until he got swept up in the fucking identity politics bullshit. You know, Pat he's had such a privileged life. I mean, a really privileged life. His dad played professional baseball. He's a good player. And Pat was always around locker rooms growing up as a kid. Great talent, you know, was always going to camps and stuff. So, you know, I don't know. Plus, he's mixed. Sometimes you get that mixed thing going on, and there's some unresolved issues every now and then, right? I mean, we've seen it before. He's just such a good kid. I just feel like he was trying to find his cred, right? That's what Pat Mahomes is trying to do. He was trying to find his street cred. I still like him. I think he's still a good kid. I just wish he'd not fall for the identity politics hook line. Okay, no, this has got to stop. Okay, this has got to stop. There's a reason why I do this sitting down now, because both you guys want to get involved, and I sit down most of the time when I do this now. And there's plenty of room for both of you on the couch, but tonight I felt like standing up, because there are nights where you want to stand up, you want to deliver, right? Now you want to play. You want to play with the mic stand. Yeah, you're a tough guy, aren't you? Yeah, you're a tough guy. When it comes to mic stands, he's a badass. When it comes to catching mice, forget it. And what are you looking at over there? What are you staring at down there? I promise you, we will talk about astrology tonight. It is going to happen. By the way, believe it or not, I am getting better. Believe it or not, I'm way better than I was last week. It's true. It may not sound completely true, but it's true. I feel like rocking the mic tonight a little bit. You know? Plus I got the blue light right? I can just like put this. If I say something that I want you to forget, I'm just going to flash this right in your eye, right there, right there. It'll be the Men in Black thing. Ready? Right there. So we watched The Manchurian Candidate last night. The first one. The doctor had never seen it before. Boy, was she blown away. That movie was made in 1962. If you want to understand everything, pretty much about everything that relates to the 20th century, between the Cold War assets, communists in the United States government, infiltration, programming, it's all there. Directed by John Frankenheimer, Lawrence Harvey in the lead role. Frank Sinatra, fantastic. Highly recommend The Manchurian Candidate. You cannot have a complete understanding and discussion about trauma-based programming, triggering, and mind control without watching that movie. It is effing brilliant. Just brilliant. And not only that, but you get a real glimpse as to like how embedded both China and particularly the Soviet Union are in the affairs of the United States. It is just a fantastic Cold War gem of a film. So highly recommend it. All right, I am going to check the score of the Niner game. Just give me 1 minute here. It's like I don't watch I don't watch football pretty much anymore, period. Because I don't like how they've politicized it. It sucks. Well, let me just do a quick peek, okay? Where are we? Where are we? CBS. Oh God, it's tied. We got a tie game. Damn, tie game. And LA's got the ball. San Francisco's just got the ball back. And they're on their own 35. They're on their own 25-yard line. 2nd and 10. And Jimmy Garoppolo just threw an incomplete pass. Cooper Kupp having a Cooper Kupp kind of game. They don't have anybody that can cover him. And Debo having a Debo game for sure. All right, delay of game. It's on SF. Oh man. Okay, I got to go back. I can't. I got to leave. Are you leaving? All right, everybody, give it up for Jasper. What a great guest he was tonight. Always a strong performance by Jasper, the astrological cat. You know, I was going to put a kind of a space theme back here, but I really like these dolphins. And to me, they're very Aquarian. They're like breaking waves. You know, they're breaking waves. They're happy. You ever been around a pod of dolphins? They just automatically become happy. You see these wonderful, beings, and they're just like popping through the surface and riding the sort of the prow of the boat and everything. They're doing a little surfing number. Like, it just makes you really happy to see them. And if you've ever like hung out with some dolphins, you'll feel happy just hanging out with them. I mean, vibration is really, really high. And I did that one time in the Keys in Florida. I would love to do it again. I would really enjoy that because they were pretty cool. And more people should be able to do that. I think it should be required. What would happen? What would happen if they took some inner city kids that are really fucked up? You know what I mean? Like really fucked up. Like violent fucked up, and what would happen if they took them out on a boat and had them hanging out with a pot of dolphins. I bet you changed their fucking life. I really do. First of all, most of them haven't probably even seen a real life dolphin. That's number one. Number two, I'd say probably most of them haven't been on a boat. I wouldn't say all of them, but not most of them haven't been on a boat. Number three, they probably can't swim most of the time. So you have to kind of, get them life jacketed up, right? So they have an option. You either go out here, you hang out with the dolphins, or you're going to go do some jail time. What do you want to do? I want to do some jail time. No, it's not an option. Sorry. We were just playing around. You have to go to the dolphins. And you take them out there. And you take them out more than once, maybe. And I'll bet you their lives will be changed. I'll bet you their lives will be changed. Now, not all of them will be changed, but some of them will be changed. And they won't deal with reality in the same way that they've been dealing with reality before. That's my sense. I could be wrong, but that's my sense. Now, some people would say maybe what you should do is put them in a shark cage. That might be a really interesting form of therapy. You put them in a shark cage with a really big shark and let them hang out in the shark cage for an hour or so. That's the scared straight version of the model, right? It's like, hey, guess what? Think you're tough? You get to go swim with the sharks, right? Like, that would definitely be a life change. But I think this is the more benign model. The more benign model. Just change their vibration. Have them walk a different path. All right, are you back again now? Huh? Are you back here ready to go? Well, yeah. I know. Now you're all talky. Now you're all with it. So we got an Aquarius New Moon. Can you feel it? It's a little wacky. Aquarius Moon is interesting. It's a very interesting moon. Have you ever had a lover with an Aquarian moon? They're different. They have different kinds of needs, shall we say? I've found people with Aquarian moons to be very voyeuristic, they like to watch. Plus other things, they're unusual. They have unusual emotional wiring. They're not your typical vanilla white bread sort of person when it comes to expressing their emotions. So they're a very interesting group of people for sure. Very non-judgmental, pretty detached, kind of eccentric. Aquarian moon is an eccentric moon, and wants to express itself in a unique way. And sometimes you don't know with an Aquarian moon person, you don't know it's coming. Like it can just be totally out of the blue, right? Just totally out of the blue. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again. So I did have a girlfriend who had an Aquarian moon, and she was what was her rising sign? She was a Cancer rising, and she was a Leo sun. So she was born on this Aquarian full moon. And she was definitely into the watching thing. So, okay, just to be, I'm just being 100% like straight up, right? 100% straight up. Like, it's like, I've never really been into strip clubs. It's like, it's sort of, you know what it's like? It's like somebody takes you to a really, really, really good buffet and there's all this food there. and they say, oh, doesn't that look really great? Yeah, you can't have any. That's what a strip club to me was always like. It was like, why would I want to go? I mean, yeah, throw some whatever. So I was never a strip club person. Not my thing. If you're into it, whatever. I'm not opposed to it. We had the great Shamika Michelle on Friday. She talked about, learning how to, the tools of the trade and everything when she was a young woman. She did really well at it. And she left, I think, after 5 or 6 months, something like that. But it's never really been my thing. But this woman I was with, she was like, she was into watching. So, sometimes when you're around people like that, it can be very liberating because they'll do things and they'll like experience things that you won't or that you're not into. So you're kind of like, okay, well, I'll go along for the ride here because this is not my normal magic carpet ride. Right. So I'll go along with the ride. Let's see where this goes. So one night, I think I've told this story before. She dressed up kind of like a man. Like you couldn't really tell if she was a woman or not. She was wearing a hat and scarf and was really bundled up, right? So we go to the Mitchell brothers in San Francisco. Of course, one of them, Jim and Arnie, they were famous like porn producers, directors. They directed Behind the Green Door. They directed The Devil and Miss Jones. They directed Deep Throat, the three big porn movies that launched porn in the 1970s. So that was their club. And I forget who killed who. I think Jim killed Arnie or Arnie killed Jim. I forget which one it was. But anyway, I think they were still alive at that point in time. So we go inside. She pays for my ticket. And of course, they got this main stage. And then there's this thing called the Ultra Room. And the Ultra Room is where you sit. It's like a horseshoe, right? It's like a horseshoe. It's a smallish room, dark, and the horseshoe is a bench. And then they give you these like theater flashlights, those old theater flashlights with the cones on them, and they give them to you. And it's like, what is this all about? So all of a sudden, the music starts, and out pop these two women who start doing this routine. And the theater lights are so you can watch them, right? You can focus a beam of light on them and watch them. You got all these lights. It's all filled with dudes. Anyway, she's sitting in there. She's watching. That's what she wants to do. She wants to watch the whole damn thing. So again, there's a reason why I don't really go to these places. It's not just because it's like you go to this great buffet and they say, oh, isn't that really good food? Yeah, sorry, you can't have any. That's mainly part of it. But the other part is that like there's some strange characters that go to these places. And so they're like doing this like kind of one-on-one thing, simulation. And one of the guys gets up out of his seat with his theater flashlight and starts shining his theater flashlight into one of the woman's, into her anus, right? Like he really wants to get a really good look at, where the action really is. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? This is so bizarre, and she didn't care. She didn't mind. So then they start to go around, right? And then the idea is that they're going to strip for you. And the more money you give them, the longer they'll stay there and do their thing. And I'm like, it wasn't that big of a deal for me, actually. It was like, okay, well, whatever. But this guy next to me, was like, he just kept feeding her money. And these women are very, very talented. They know exactly what they're doing. So she spent this time with this guy, right? And now I'm watching, and not because I want to watch, it's because like he's fucking next to me. And so she takes her leg and puts it in between his leg. And so, the dude's got he's got a stiffy, And he keeps giving her money, and she keeps like, gyrating and then moving her knee in his crotch until eventually I watched the guy's eyes roll back into his head, right? I'm like, oh, great. All right, so I'm next. I'm like, yeah, here's a buck or two, whatever, $5, just keep going. And then eventually they go back into their, area for the next performance, right? And it was so odd in a lot of ways. Like I wasn't that into it, right? But she was into it, and she was into watching everything. And there's your Aquarian moon in action in a lot of ways. So God bless you if you have an Aquarian moon. You're more than likely a very, very interesting person. Do you have an Aquarian moon? You might. Although, I don't think you like to watch. Okay, let's see who we have here tonight. What's going on? I like the mic thing. Susie Gemini. There she is. There's the doc. Lovely and talented Joan S. Miranda Couch. W.C. Ray. What's going on, my man, Robin? J.J. Blanc. J.J. Rain de Blanc. Let's get it right, Robert. Ian Barber. What's going on, Ian? Leaf. Dragsuth. Hello, Leaf. Kelly B. in the house. Liz Lucius. Checking from Brisbane. Liz, if you want to escape to Texas, you let me know. Lapicius in the house. What's going on? Mark S. Provocateur, Astrologer. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Thor at the door. There's my man, Steve. Benito Diaz. What's going on, brother? Good to see you. I'll be pulling for my Bengals if my QB was still with them. Who's your QB? Who's the QB? Joe Burrow's the man. Let's see. Chinese Year the Tiger. Coincidence? Maybe. Whimsical Farm Girl. She's here. Pat Mahomes is from my hometown. So Pat Mahomes is from East Texas, right? Isn't he like from like Tyler or someplace like that? That's where Earl Campbell. I like Pat. I just think he went down the wrong path. Did anyone else notice YouTube scrubbing the trucker live cams in Ottawa? I found a bunch yesterday, Harley's. Yeah, we're going to talk about the trucker stuff tonight. We're going to try to break some of that down. Oh, okay. See you later. Let's see. Thomas Jordan's here. Misty Minor. Sony here. Liz Atwell. Truckers are amazing. Truckers coming in from all over Australia, heading to Canberra. Check it out on Telegram. Okay, there you go. The cats see fish. Those are not fish. They think they're fish, but they are not fish. Sony is back. Susan Chappelle. Hi, Susan. Good to see you. Sheila Sampson. The thing with Oz, not many independent truckers, mostly employed by big trucking firms. Yep. Let's see. Robert needs to start screaming about the gay frogs in that voice. Did you flashy thing us? I don't know if I did flashy thing you. Let's see who else do we have here. Manchurian Candidate, man. I know I want to see the other version with Denzel Washington. I really like Denzel. I think he's terrific. Yes, I will be on with Nish tomorrow. That is true. That is true. 2 p.m. Yep. Bliss Lee's here. What's going on, Bliss? Ayurveda and Astrology. Good evening to you. Michael Sisternino. Michael knows the Mitchell brothers. Not that he goes there, but that's his turf. I don't know if they still have the Mitchell brothers now. Who do you trust more, Jimmy G and his mediocrity, or Stafford shooting himself in the foot? Stafford is an Aquarian, and the moon just went into Aquarius. He could have a really strong finish to the game. It's born February 7th. So I don't know. Jimmy G, has actually played a pretty good game. The thing about Jimmy G is a Scorpio. He'll always do well, like in these really intense, pressurized situations and moments. He's a Scorpio. That's what Scorpios do. Why am I frozen? I had to unfreeze myself. Yeah. So yeah, Scorpios are really good at high pressure situations. Oh, my mic is flashy. Yeah. Winter 1978, 79 farmers take over Capitol Mall is the model for truckers. Let's see. Meredith Lucky Stars, my partner in demonic possession. Jolie Wells in the house. Lana Anderson, Pink Floyd at Pompeii was amazing. Oh, I think I saw the movie for that. Everyone is always born on December 25th. That's December 25th is the Russia chart. We're going to look at that tonight, by the way. Mm-hmm. Yep. Aquarius Sun, Scorpio Moon. Jamie. That's interesting. That's a good combination. Having a weird feeling about this convoy that I want to suppress because I love unity. Why would you want to suppress it? Get it out. Get it out. Ew, AJ McCarron. You know, AJ McCarron, some people win the life lottery. AJ McCarron won the wife lottery. AJ's a decent player, but he's no Joe Burrow. Let's see, what else do we have here? Aquarius Rising, Aqua Rising, cool. Have a great sex life with your partner. Stay out of the ass parasite strip clubs. You'll be good. I've never been into the whole strip club thing. It's just not my thing. Sex work started in Rome, supposedly, and Rome fell. Let's see. My sweetie is an Aquarian Chiron moon. Well, that explains everything. No, I'm just kidding, squirrel. Maya Rose is here. Deanna, what's happening, Deanna? Good look at Trudeau's chart. We've done that before, haven't we? I think he's a Libra. I have Aquarian moon, but I am a very boring person. Too much Saturn energy. That can always change, right? Rosie's a triple Aries, probably. My experience with Aquarian moon person is more emotion expressed for strangers than their loved ones. That's a very interesting observation, Don. I would say that that's pretty true. I'd say it's pretty true. Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's see. Occult priestess in the house here. I'm supposed to do a show with her at some point. Pamela Holdall. She's here. Beth Cummings is here. Let's see. Natasha, TMI. Oh, it is gross. Well, you know, it's the seedy side of life. And I'm probably telling you the PG version. The Rams. Oh no, please don't. Please don't. You don't want to ruin it for me. Please don't ruin it for me, Robin. Please don't ruin it for me. It's down to the wire. Live now. Uh-oh. End of fourth. The Rams won. Damn it. Field goal. Damn it. Ugh. I hate the fucking Rams. I hate it. I knew they were. So you know why I had a feeling the Rams were going to win? Because they're playing in SoFi Stadium. That's where the Super Bowl is. That is where the Super Bowl is. And it was going to be, I think, very hard for the 49ers to win in that stadium. Hey, they had a pretty good season. And guess what? I'm not as invested in pro football as I once was. So that's a good thing. All right. Why don't we get into some astrology here, since I've talked about the sordid and seedy life of San Francisco. Let's see where we are here. Let's just do this. Oh, I got to go over here. I may have to, at some point, take a quick break and get some water because I'm pretty thirsty. But I'm not going to do that now. Okay, let's look at the chart of the moment here. Let's get into it. Let's find out where we are in the cosmos. Okay. So the moon is at 25. Looks like 25 Capricorn. So we're not quite there with the Aquarian moon yet. So we were balsamic 25. And we've got a moon Pluto conjunction. Well, no wonder I was talking about the Mitchell brothers and the Aquarian moon and the sordid emotion. No, there wasn't. The emotions weren't sordid. This is different. It's just different, right? But we got a moon Pluto conjunction. Here, I'll show you. Let's get that up on the screen for everybody to check out. Right there. So, you've got a moon Pluto conjunction. I had to go there. I felt compelled. I didn't even know why. Now I know why. So we got this balsamic moon, and it's at a really interesting degree, 25 degrees. So tonight it's conjuncting Pluto, and tomorrow will be at around 28, 29, moon conjunct Pluto, and getting into Aquarius tomorrow. So this is a very interesting balsamic moon right now. Okay, so let's use this balsamic moon as kind of a template moment and something that you can actually apply to your life. What do you want to let go of? What do you want to let go of? Because to me, this is the moon to do it. Right? This is really the moon to do it. You won't get another balsamic moon in Capricorn, right? Until next year. And by next year, Pluto is going to be ingressing into Aquarius. So you might get one more balsamic moon in Capricorn conjunct Pluto in Aquarius. You might get one more. Unless, of course, there's another with the retrograde. But they're going to be few and far between, right? So when we see the balsamic moon, meaning that it's overripe, there's this idea of dissipation, dissemination, and letting go. So when you have a conjunction with Pluto there, what do you want to let go of? What do you want to cauterize? Because when you deal with Pluto, you're dealing with like finality and like burning through something. So what kind of emotional content do you want to, with Pluto, letting go is part of the equation, but it's like daring yourself in some ways to let go of something that is incredibly limiting. especially when you're dealing with Capricorn. So it can be things like authority, the fear of death, right? The fear of your parents, what's happening to your parents, maybe an overweening fear for your children, because when we deal with the moon, we're dealing with very maternal feelings towards, even if it's in Capricorn. I mean, we're dealing with the moon here, right? So it's an opportunity to transform something and to let it go. Let it go. And then when you let it go, there's some magic that can happen here, because then you're opening up for new emotional content and new emotional possibility with this new moon in Aquarius. I think this is a very interesting balsamic moon. And when you deal with the new moon in Aquarius, you're dealing with things like, you know, possibility, universality, kind of more hope, more of a sense of, you know, the human family, right? I mean, and having the potential for connecting with people on an emotional level that aren't necessarily part of your inner circle or part of your immediate nuclear family. But like, to me, this moon in Aquarius, this new moon in Aquarius, offers up this potential for a fresh start in some ways. So, but here now, to get there, it's like facing, you know, we'll throw out the old, you know, the old lingo here: facing your shadow, facing your fear, facing your attachments, right? That's all moon Pluto stuff. Like, what are you attached to? What are you afraid of? What are you holding on to? This is a really good time to, like, you know, cut it loose, let it go and cut it loose. You know, one of the things that you could do tonight is you can write things down on a piece of paper, and you just say, affirm and decree that I am letting go of these emotional circumstances, or I'm letting go of these emotional constraints, or I'm letting go of the things that hold me back due to my fear, which I experience through my emotions. You could write all that stuff down, right? And then light it on fire, of course, in a safe place, and let it go, right? Pluto's about fire. You know, Pluto's about the fire that purges and clears things out. So this is a good night to do it. You know, it's a good night to just face that stuff, put it down, and then boom, you know, you've got a basically a you know, fresh slate to start from with this new Aquarian moon. And then what do you want, right? Then what do you want? It's like, well, I'm, you know, emotionally, I'd like other people that I could relate to, right? Which is very Aquarian. Or I'd like to live in a situation that is more open and free than the one that I'm currently in. Or I'd like to be able to express myself more authentically on an emotional level and not care so much about what other people think. Because that's the other thing about Aquarian moons. Right? A lot of times they're not buying into what other people think about or care about how they feel. It's like, hey, that's your issue, right? So I think it's a very interesting phase cycle that we're in, because not only that, but it's going to obviously conjunct the sun. So we're going to have you know, that new moon sun conjunction, where you can really put some of the emotional content into action in some ways, right? But then we're going to have that moon conjuncting Saturn, and it almost feels like you can make it official. You know, Saturn makes it official. So whatever you start off with the Aquarian new moon, and what your hopes and aspirations are, the conjunction with Saturn, when's that going to be? Like Tuesday? The conjunction with Saturn will be strong, right? It will almost be like what you're intending, right? What you're emotionally programming, it gets set. So make it count. Make it count. Make it count good. And of course, the moon will also square off against Uranus here. We've got a Sun Uranus square right now, and it's rebellious. Aquarius is the sign of the rebel, and there's a lot of rebellious energy that's going on, that's taking place. You've got this whole trucker thing, which I'm still kind of mystified by in a lot of ways, because Mercury's retrograde. And so what does that mean in terms of the truckers? Does it mean that like they're not doing their normal routes, which in some ways it kind of does, because they're moving in a different direction, right? They're not moving to deliver goods to I don't know, Aldi. They're doing something different. And the one thing about the truckers is that they're a very different breed, and some of them are independents. Okay, and an independent trucker doesn't make a ton of money. They really have to hustle because they have to go out of pocket for pretty much everything. What Liz was talking about in Australia is that there are a lot of big companies, corporations who have truck lines, and truckers work for them. And those are the guys who usually make the best money because they don't have to go out of pocket for a lot of the stuff, right? Like their insurance is covered by the company they drive for. The repairs are covered by the company they drive for, things like that. But there's also the union element with truckers, which is always kind of weird. The union thing is always a bit weird because you don't know if the unions are whose side they're on. You just never know. You never know. And I'll never forget, there was this documentary. It's a pretty well-known documentary. And it's a documentary about this town, and I think it's in Minnesota. And I think there's a Hormel factory there. I always get Hormel and Dubuque mixed up. I think it's Hormel. And there are guys there who work for the Hormel factory, and they don't believe they're making enough money. So they decide that they're going to go on strike. Now, what happens is that they get their union rep who comes in, and this guy's super slick, and gets them all pumped up, and it has a plan and a strategy. Don't worry, we've got your back. We're going to make sure you can pay your bills. Pay feed your family. And this guy is really, really good at what he does, right? Shows up, he gets these guys fired up, they're on the lines. He never comes back. Never comes back. And the union has pretty much kind of like dropped him. Meanwhile, it's split the town in two. There's a story about these two brothers, one of whom has to cross the lines because he needs a job and he can't work, and his brother's striking. It's a really intense movie. And then what you walk away with is that there's a really good possibility that the union management were in bed together and that they were staging everything and essentially breaking these guys so that management wins, gets a better contract, right? It's like, so you never know. You never know what side the union is on. It may seem like they're on the side of the worker. A lot of times they're actually working for management. So with the trucker thing, you have to kind of take that into account as well. Like, who are they really working for? And, what is the goal with the trucker thing? I'm going to put this back. I've had my Chuck Barris moment. What is really the goal with the trucker? And look, if it's about purity of intent and just doing whatever's possible, I guess, to stop the madness. So bizarre reality that we're in. I guess fine, it works. But one of the things I talked about on Friday's show is the idea that if you're going to do it, you'd want to do a siege, right? And you'd want to create a siege so that they couldn't get any goods in to wherever it is that they were sieging, whether it was the parliament or whether it was CBC or BBC or whomever, right? And I think that's a reasonable, plan. But how does this play out with the supply chain? That's another thing that we, aren't factoring in. Like, how long does this go on for? How does it impact the supply chain? How does it affect the everyday person when they're not getting the goods that are being delivered? It's something to think about, and I think something that's important. And ultimately, what is the goal? Is the goal to end the mandates? Is the goal to end the vaccines? Is that really the goal there? Maybe they'll be able to pull it off, but there's some other stuff happening, right? Like, I think they were trying to accuse these truckers of being like a January 6th crew. And I would not be at all surprised if you've got bad players involved with the truckers. Wouldn't surprise me at all. There are agent provocateurs in all these actions, right? Whether they're driving them along for the ride, getting activated at some point, that's totally possible. You could be dealing with another January 6th kind of moment. Now they're framing everything as being, white and racist, and these truckers are carrying Confederate flag. I've seen those accusations, and they're not true. Just not true. But this is where they could go with this thing. So I just think that, it shows solidarity. Don't get me wrong. It shows solidarity, but I think we have to really take into account what the end game is and how long they're able to sustain it, and where it all goes from here. We're going to be talking about Russia tonight, by the way. I've got Russia's chart. I have Ukraine's chart too, and we're also going to be talking about strategies for like your everyday life with astrology. So, things that I don't always talk about, but I think are important. So we're going to talk about some of those things tonight as well. So big picture stuff, and then personal application stuff. By the way, I was trying to get these 2 webinars. I've got them all ready to go. I spent probably 3 hours on my website trying to put these things together so that you could actually sign up for them tonight. And it's Mercury retrograde. I'm going to claim Mercury retrograde on this. I had a hell of a time tonight. So just to give you a heads up, I've got a webinar planned for the Sabian symbols, and that is from 2 weeks. Let me see. Let me give you the date on that. And some people have been asking about this. So we are talking about, it's going to be Saturday, the 19th of February. And I'll be doing a 3-hour webinar about the Sabian symbols. And that includes a history of the Sabian symbols and other related systems that use astrological degrees as symbols, including Elias Lonsdale's work, but mostly Mark Edmund Jones. So we're getting into the history of them a little bit. We'll get into a little bit about Mark Edmund Jones, and then we're going to go pretty deep into the Sabian symbols and what I think they're good for and how I think they're most useful. So that's going to be on the 19th. Let me see. Yeah, it's a Saturday. And then the following week, which is the 26th, I'm going to be doing a 3-hour webinar on the Draconic chart, which is known as the chart of the soul, which I think is a pretty interesting chart. And one that once I understood my own Draconic chart, it made an impact on my life where I was actually able to understand more things about me than it was sort of like, okay, I knew these things about myself with my natal chart, but once I was able to stare down the Draconic chart, it was like, oh, this is a hidden side of me, or a deeper side. And once I was able to decode it, I could see how it surfaces in my life. And, and what does it mean, to have this chart of the soul? And how does it relate to things like, incarnation and even relationships? So that's going to be on the 26th. It's another 3-hour webinar. Now, if you are a member of the 11th House Club, right, and you're at the Mars or the Jove membership level, if you're Mars, I'll have more webinars this year. We're going to have 2 here in February. So if you're a Mars person, you get to attend one free one, right? So one of those you can attend for free. If you're a Jove person, you can attend both for free because you get 2 free webinars. If you're at that level, that's a $20 a month level. So these are for people that are existing right now, right? Because they've been kind of paying into it, right? So if you do want to join and become a member and get those kinds of benefits, plus you get money off of my services. Any webinars after the 2 that are coming up, the same options are available for you. And then like we did in December, no matter what level you're at, whether it's the $5 a month, which is just kind of a donation level, or $10 a month or $20 a month, I did a private webinar on the astrology for 2022, and everybody got to attend. So there's more of this coming. Okay, just letting you know. And if you're a member, right, the benefits are there. And I was hoping to get it online tonight. I had pain. It was a difficult time. Okay, so let's go back to the chart of the moment for a minute. I did want to, do you see how quickly I rebounded from finding out the 49ers lost? I just moved on, right? That was my Moon Pluto moment. I just moved on. It's like, done. Go Bengals. Okay, let's go back here. Yeah, so there's Mercury, and it's at 25, Capricorn, retrograde, and right now it's right in there with that balsamic moon and Pluto. It's kind of an interesting position for Mercury retrograde, especially in the midst of this trucker stuff. And I don't think that they do want to make a big deal out of it. I do think they want to shut these streams down. Look, we've witnessed tens of thousands of people take to the streets in countries all over the world, and you won't hear a damn thing on the mainstream media in this country. I mean, they just won't report it. The phrase or the saying of the revolution will not be televised. Gil Scott-Heron was absolutely right about that. He was absolutely right about that the real revolution would not be televised. Of course, the fake revolution, cameras 24/7. And maybe Gil would think that, well, that was really the revolution. No, it wasn't. I'm sorry. It only looked like a revolution. It was all pretty much staged. No, the real revolution won't be televised, isn't televised. Unless you know where to go with alternative streams, which are becoming more and more prevalent. Mars has just moved into Capricorn, and we're coming up on that Mars-Venus conjunction, which is interesting. And Venus is direct now, right? We got a Venus direct. It's stationary at one point. Yeah, we got Venus direct. It's right on my natal Saturn. How about that? So Venus moves a little bit faster than Mars, obviously. And on March 2nd, we're going to have the Venus-Mars-Pluto conjunction. To me, that's a huge conjunction, like massive, massive conjunction. To me, that feels like a war conjunction in Capricorn. Like Venus doesn't get a chance to negotiate there. You know, it doesn't get a chance to negotiate. It's just full on intensity. So we're going to have that Mars Venus conjunction exact on the 2nd. It's not, so it's within orb now, but it's not there. Wait till the 2nd of March. And it's going to be conjunct Pluto, all 27 degrees. Very intense time. And we'll be in the flow of the Pluto return at that time as well. So everything that's kind of in motion now is leading towards that moment in time. And a lot of people think that this whole Ukraine thing is just, you know, going to kind of blow over, and it's not that big a deal. I beg to differ, right? I beg to differ a little bit here. And it's more than just Ukraine. There are other areas, other regions that Russia is obviously interested in, Kazakhstan. But you have things like the Nord Stream, and you also have things like Stripe. And they're talking about hitting Russia with sanctions and then getting them off of Stripe. And Stripe essentially allows like countries to transact. You know, it's not Stripe. It's what is it? Stripe. It's fuck. Oh, okay, now it's got a. Okay, hold on a second. I have the moment. Swift, thank you. Stripe is, yeah, Swift. They're talking about getting Russia off of Swift. If they do that, then all bets are off. And they've been talking about that as part of these sanctions. Now, what's really interesting is this whole idea of this like Cold War drama and Cold War dilemma or Cold War. I mean, when you watch The Manchurian Candidate, you can kind of see how all these sides are working together. I mean, that's the one thing that people sometimes forget, and it comes through in that movie, The Manchurian Candidate. And there was a lot of that going on during the Cold War, that the United States and Russia were kind of working hand in glove in a lot of ways. And in other ways, they weren't. In other, you know, there were some areas where the United States was still trying to play, you know, the Cold War game or the spy game. And that at other levels, people in the know knew that, you know, there were all these deals that were happening and all these people were already in place. And a lot of it was just theater, right? So it's important to keep that in mind, that, you know, we'd like to think that, okay, well, Putin is either a bad guy or Putin's the savior of the West or whatever that narrative or story is. And then we'd like to think that, well, you know, Ukraine matters and, you know, Russia wants Ukraine back and all these, and all these things could be true. And they have a basis in some version of reality. But really what it boils down to is that we don't really know, right? We don't know what the real theater is. Now, if they, and here's what happens with gangs. We've talked about this before, because what we're dealing with here is gangs. So gangs can cross each other. They do that. And they could wind up crossing Russia, right? That could happen. And if Russia is off of SWIFT, they have no way to transact, and it's forcing their hand. Really, totally forcing. And if that all happens, then the dominoes are going to fall very quickly, and we could have some real issues with banking and money. So now we're getting into the squares here with Uranus, and especially if we get into this lunar Saturn conjunction, squaring Uranus Tuesday, Wednesday. And if they start fucking around with Russia and hit them with sanctions and get them into SWIFT, get them off of SWIFT, that transit could be tricky, really tricky. And it wouldn't take much to, start shutting things down. And then you've got all these truckers who are out on these, these giant convoys. It could be a total recipe for disaster. So again, just make sure that you have what you need. I mean, that's really, really important. You don't want to be stuck for cash. You don't want to be stuck for. And apparently, we're going to get snow here now next week, so it's going to start to get very cold. I guess they've had snow in North Carolina and parts of the South. So here we go. We're kind of going into the dark, cold winter. And if they start these international hijinks and they cut Russia off of SWIFT and then, there's some kind of, banking hack or things could get very dark very quickly. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for that. And I've talked about preparation before. And I think you should still be in preparation mode. We got Mars in Capricorn, which I like. Like if you want to get a lot of work done, Mars in Capricorn is your friend. So wherever Mars is showing up in your chart, obviously that's where you're going to get the most juice from it, right? So just make sure if you're going to put your nose to the grindstone and work hard, it's in the right area. Like if you've got, there are some tricky places for Mars. So like a Mars 11th house transit can be tricky. Unless you're leading a team, like Mars transits in the 11th house can be very argumentative. Yet if you're dealing with Capricorn, then you're dealing with hierarchies and bosses. So if you're leading with a Mars transit in the 11th house, it can be good. If you're not leading, then Mars 11th house transits can be definitely conflict oriented, but it's okay. It's all right. You just have to just deal with it. Learn from it. Now we do have this Mars Chiron square going on right now. So that's a little tricky. That'll be happening. See right there, there's Mars, there's Chiron. That's going to be going on probably to the end of the week. And to me, that's an aspect where the best defense is not always a good offense. To me, that's like jumping the shark. It's like, lashing out or striking out because you're feeling vulnerable with that Chiron square. You have to be careful with that Mars Chiron square. If you are going to use some degree of force or some degree of volition, which is what Mars is about, theoretically, it should be about like facing up to a fear, which is where Chiron comes into play. That you're using that energy to stare something down and conquer a fear and get stronger through it, right? it should not necessarily be used to go on to attack mode, because that could be problematic, very problematic. Because you might wind up getting some heavy duty aggression back with that Mars Chiron square. And, you know, that's one of those aspects too, that depending on where Mars is in your chart, like if you have Mars transiting your 12th house, or you have Mars transiting your 8th house, you want to be aware of your surroundings with that square. You don't just want to, like, you know, be walking around and, you know, have your head in the clouds and, you know, the next thing you know, you've gotten a rude awakening from somebody because you're either not paying attention, or, you know, you've traveled 2 blocks and all of a sudden you're in a part of town that is not always the most welcoming. So that's a really important thing, right? Mars Chiron square, situational awareness, especially if it's transiting through your 12th or your 8th. You don't want to be blindsided with that Mars Chiron square. Trust me on that. By the end of the week, you know, Mars is kind of moving on a little bit, and we're starting to get into more of that trine with Uranus, which can be really innovative. And you can get a lot of work done with Mars Uranus trine if you're interested. If it's interesting and creative, you'll get a lot of work done. And some of your best ideas can be really fleshed out with a Mars Uranus trine. You got to get through the Mars Chiron square a little bit there too. But by and large, I like Mars in Capricorn. I think it's a good transit, just in general. You know, there's our friend Jupiter in Pisces, Mars coming in sextiling it, right? Venus coming in sextiling Jupiter. Jupiter's pretty benevolent this week. We've got Jupiter sextiling Uranus, which is that's genius. You know, that's spontaneity. That's being improvisational. So, and listening to something higher, right? Pisces is about the higher dictates, excuse me, voice of the spirit. So there is some inspiration for sure this week. Absolutely. Yep, 100%. I generally like the energy for the week ahead. The only thing that's tricky is, you know, this Moon Pluto conjunction and getting through some shit, right? Like letting go. And then what happens as the Moon moves through these various stages, that's Moon Saturn conjunction, things can be kind of locked in. Fixed signs, squaring Uranus, you know. And I think we'll know more about what's going on with the whole trucker thing by then, and Russia, for that matter. Not much fire in the sky. We got Chiron in Aries. So, you know, it's interesting because the last couple of weeks I've just been kind of spent. And we did have Mars and Sag, which I appreciated. Probably got me through not being 100%, but there's no fire right now. Like, none really. And we're not going to really get any fire until, I mean, we'll pick up some fire with like the Moon in Aries. You know, we'll go through these lunar cycles, we'll get some fire, but we're not going to get any real fire until Aries, right? End of March. So we've got, you know, the rest of January here, which is one day, right? All of February. And then finally we get to the end of March. And, you know, Aries comes on like a, you know, like a storm, like a firestorm. And then that's also at that time, that's when Mars comes back to the sky, the night sky, and is visible again. So until now and then, there's just not a lot of, fiery energy and passion. So there's a lot of Capricorn, which means steady as she goes. Plan your moves, right? There's some inspired kinds of energy in the air with Jupiter and Pisces and the sextile with Uranus. So you guys can roll with that stuff, right? Right. Okay. So before I get into the Russia chart in Ukraine, I did want to talk about a little bit about strategies and how to just deal with everyday life astrologically. And this is not going to be rocket science, okay? Because if you wanted to, like, you could go and look at where the moon is every day, and you look at this aspect and this aspect and this aspect, and you could try and add it all up and live your life accordingly, which I think is a mistake, by the way. I'm not a proponent of that. I don't think, to me, it's too mechanical and it's too astrologically dependent. And I'm just not a fan of living like that. I do think it's important to know where the big transits are in your life, and where some like micro transits, like the Mars transit we were talking about, I think those things are important. But in terms of using astrology on an everyday level to move through life, sometimes trying to add up everything so that you know where you are, where the cosmos is, and where your place is. Sometimes it's a bit much, because a lot of times there can also be conflicting energy. Like, you could be going through a difficult transit. You could also be going through like a really interesting transit, and all the, so how does this all, how do you add it all up and integrate it all? Well, first of all, you just have to live your life. That's important. And then, you can follow your chart and you can see where things are. You go, okay, well, I can make an adjustment here, or, I've got some momentum here. Maybe I could push it a little bit here, right? But what I'm going to share with you is a really easy primer for how you deal with life on an everyday basis with astrology. And it has to do with your rising sign. Okay, so your rising sign is the navigational window with you in the world. Number one, the rising sign is important. Now, with the rising sign, there's also something called the ruling planet. And it's usually connected to the sign that rules the planet, that is connected to that sign. And it is through the ruling planet that you can more easily navigate through life, right? So let me try to explain this, and so you guys can begin to maybe understand this and have it be an ally for you versus, say, a hindrance in a lot of ways. Because a lot of times people say, "Oh, I hate my rising sign. I don't like. I'm a Virgo rising," or "Fuck, I don't like. I'm a Capricorn rising." It is what it is. I mean, you were born with these things. And there's a reason you were born with these things. So you may as well learn how to express them and, for the better part, master them. So let's play around with this a little bit, okay? Let's say you're an Aries rising. What's going to be your ruling planet? Your ruling planet is going to be Mars. That's your ruling planet. So how you navigate through life, no matter what transits you're going through, right? No matter what you're going through, theoretically, it should be predicated by how you express your will. Bottom line, end of story, right? If Mars is your ruling planet, because that's the ruler of Aries, right? How you move through your everyday life, even if you don't have Mars in Aries, so you have Mars in Pisces, and it's in the 12th house, or let's say you have Mars in, Gemini. Like, those things count. Don't get me wrong. They're not something you should just forget about. But you're still going to be guided by Mars in terms of how you move through everyday life. So the idea for you is to deal with life where you meet life's challenges. That's how it works. No matter what goes on in your life, you are there to meet life's challenges. You are there to express a certain amount of drive and capacity to deal with life's challenges. And to some degree, even take on a leadership role as Mars applies itself through the ascendant. So what does that differ from other signs? Well, you're not a Cancer rising, so you're not going to be using your emotions to move through everyday life. That would be a mistake, right? Like if you're a Cancer, if you're an Aries rising and you're trying to live your life every day emotionally, it's not going to work. And you may have a lunar placement that may make you somewhat emotional, but that's not the right approach to your life. The right approach to your life is roll up your sleeves and figure out, what the issue is, what the problem is, and move forward, right? You're going to be Mars driven. And there's not a lot of intellectual kind of processing with Mars. It's like, this is it, get it done, do it. And the thing with Aries too, is that Aries they don't really apologize for things. And that's just part of their sign. And even on the ascendant, they don't really always apologize for things. So if you make a mistake, you make a mistake and you buckle up and you keep moving, right? That's the idea. Like that's how you respond to your everyday conditions. And so you also have to be active. If you're not active and you're an Aries ascendant, right? You have Mars atrophy. And then guess what happens? You can attract aggressive people, or you yourself can be aggressive at times. And you may not need to be aggressive, right? So you're here to learn about that. So your daily approach is going to be Mars driven. Just remember that it's not about Venus, where you're not here to negotiate with people. You're not here to, and I'm being serious now. You're not here to have a win-win situation. That's just not how it works. You'll deplete your focus. You'll deplete your intention, right? And intention is just about everything with Aries. So you have to understand what your ruling planet is. And once you understand that on an everyday basis, that's how you can move through life. Now, every now and then, you may encounter some intensity, like, I don't know, maybe Mars square now, because if you're an Aries rising and there's Mars in Capricorn, you look at it. But guess what? You're ruled by Mars anyway. So you'll just be dealing with trying to figure out how to, do a different kind of Mars, right? Or integrate it in a way where you're still dealing with Mars, but it's just going to be, maybe not about just you, but you and, a higher level of responsibility for your Mars, which is what Capricorn is. So do you understand what I'm saying? So we're going to go through the signs here, and we're just going to try to make it really simple so that you can figure out on a daily basis how to navigate your life just easier, right? Taurus rising. That means you're going to be ruled by Venus. So what does that mean? Well, unlike Mars, Venus likes to, be complementary. It likes to be relatable. Now, in Taurus, it's very different, because when you deal with Taurus, you're dealing with things that are physical bodies, clothing, physical goods, food, right? But it's still Venus. And to me, Venus here in Taurus rulership has a lot to do with luxury and security, right? So your everyday strategy with life, and I'm using this in a way that is not pejorative, but your everyday strategy should be to be comfortable. And when I say comfortable, I don't necessarily mean that you should be like, just taking things for granted. That's not what I'm talking about. When I say comfortable, it means that you're in your body, that you like your body, that you like what you're wearing, that it feels good, that you have a relationship with the world around you that tends to be more earthy and a little more sensual, or a little more invested in, at times, material acquisition. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And it's through Venus that you can, build relationships so you could have these things. So you're Venus ruled. And the best thing that you can do with that is to be comfortable in your body, however it is, how you look, how you feel, how you smell, right? And then every day, the idea for your navigating should have something to do with being on the earth, with materiality, and either bringing more of it into your life or sharing it with other people, right? When you do those things through Venus, you'll get more. You'll just get more. You give, you get, receive, right? I mean, but the main thing is to be comfortable with your body, with your attire, with your aesthetics, and to be able to, make bridges. And they're usually economic bridges. They're usually physical bridges with other people, right? So you want some level of cooperation with Venus if you're a Taurus rising. That's your approach, right? You do that every day. That's your approach every day, which means you're going to feed your body. You're going to look good. You're going to feel good. The clothes you wear, they're going to, sit on you well. You'll be able to deal with, life easier. It will flow better. Doesn't always make it easy. It doesn't always solve everything, but you're able to deal with things if you're feeling comfortable and secure in who you are, and you're looking good, and you're feeling good, and you're smelling good, and you're engaged in the acquisition of material well-being for yourself and for others. Pretty simple, right? I mean, there's different layers there. What about Gemini, where your ruling planet is Mercury? So you're mental. You're going to move through the world mentally. You're going to look at, sometimes people have Venus and Taurus, they take their time. That's the other thing, Venus, that's the other, Taurus rising, you can't be rushed. Like, you need to take your time. That's the comfortable part, right? When you feel grounded and you feel like, you're kind of lined up with your gut, with the Taurus rising, and you can move, you can make decisions. That's not how Gemini rising operates. Gemini rising operates fast. It sees Taurus rising people as like, too slow, get out of my lane, right? So your approach, if you're Gemini, is mental. So you need to live your life every day through the mental body. And, that means that the decisions you make, it means the path you take, the route you take, how you process information is going to be through Mercury. That's how, again, it's not the moon. So you're not going to be emotional, right? And what you want to do is you just want to get used to that, and you want to be okay with that. You want to be okay with being flexible and mutable and fast, and being able to make decisions on the fly, and always using your antenna around you to acquire more information. That's how you move through the world. And it's, and once you understand it, it's pretty simple, right? I mean, Mercury is going to be the thing that allows you to interact on a daily basis. Now, in human design, about 69% of the population are either generators or they're manifesting generators. So the strategy for them is to respond. And basically that's what you do through the rising sign, is you're responding to everyday life, right? That's how the rising sign works. So the majority of you are going to be generators and manifesting generators. So this is going to apply to you, most of you. Some of you projectors will have a different discussion about that. If you're a Cancer rising, you're not going to be mental. The rulership for your rising sign is the moon. So you're going to be instinctive. You're going to be intuitive. You're going to be emotional. There's downsides to, all these things, right? Like, if you're too mental on the Gemini side, you'll miss out on the emotional part. But again, that's secondary. What we're trying to do is get you to understand that your operating system is driven by Mercury, which means that you are going to be a thinker. You are going to be somebody who's going to gather information. You're going to be somebody who can navigate and flip scripts and, and pivot and be mutable, right? Cancer rising is different. You're going to be emotional, and your emotions and your feelings will guide you through everyday life. And if you get good at it, you will trust your instincts. You will trust your emotions, and you will know when to pull back or when to move forward, which is what Cancer does, right? You have to, once you understand your operating system, you're gonna be connected to being emotional, and there's intuition, and so you're gonna care for people, and you're gonna be maternal, and all those things that go along with the moon, right? Sometimes the challenge with the moon is you don't always know where you're going, because you're not being completely rational or mental. But if you understand your operating system, right, then you'll trust your instincts and you'll trust your emotions. And, as you go through life, you begin to learn the rising sign a bit more, so that the negative stuff, or the things that hold you back with the rising sign, are the things that you ultimately work out, like being too emotional, or holding on to a situation for too long, right? You get to work through those things in your life, so that ultimately you trust your emotions, and you know when to let go, when to hang on, intuitively who to trust or where to invest your emotions, right? So again, just part of your operating system. If you're Cancer rising, don't try to be a freaking Gemini rising. Don't try to be an Aries rising, right? It's not going to work. Just trust your feelings, trust your instincts, and allow yourself to be drawn to situations where you resonate with them. And if you are in a situation that you're not resonating with somebody emotionally, trust that too and pull back. Pretty simple, right? All right, Leo rising, you're ruled by the sun, obviously, which is the expression of the self and the ego. But I really feel like Leo rising has a lot to do with the heart. So, first of all, your approach to the world is going to be about you, right? But I think what's interesting about Leo rising people is that for some people it's a real stretch. You could be, let's say, a Capricorn with a Leo rising person, be a Leo rising person. Those are two very, very different energies. So you have to figure out, well, how do I put this Leo rising thing on, right? So it's important. It's a very important integration that needs to take place. So with Leo rising, of course, you're here to build character and some courage, but you're really here to open your heart and follow your heart. That's always going to be your go-to with Leo rising, right? And that requires some courage and some boldness. And so you're here to develop that. And there's an intelligence in the heart, right? There's an intelligence there. It's not emotional like the moon is. It does have some degree of emotion, but there's an intelligence of the heart. So if you're a Leo rising person and you've had your heart broken a few times, or you've really trusted your heart and it's really paid off, you'll know what I'm talking about. And then the heart knows, right? Like you're making heart-based decisions in your life with everything. And those things, sometimes those aren't always easy choices to make, because it's not always feel good, right? Sometimes hard choices to make are hard choices to make, but then you figure it out, and it's like you won't want to live any other way, because when you do that, then people will see that, and then they'll notice you, they'll recognize you, and that's where that Leo solar logos comes into the ascendant. and people will get recognized for their ability to, be a leader or, live their life in a kind of an uncompromising way. So that's what you want to do, right? The sun is your ruling planet. So, but I think here with Leo, you're really learning how to make your everyday decisions based on your heart and the things that you're passionate about and that are important to you. And those are big lessons. Those are really big lessons. Virgo. So we're going to talk a little bit about Mercury again to some degree, because again, it's the ruling planet of Virgo. But it's different than Gemini. Same thing. You're going to be dealing with the world on an analytical level. But the difference between Gemini and Virgo is Virgo wants to solve problems. So if you're Virgo rising and you are being ruled by Mercury, you better be solving problems. You got to use your head to solve. Gemini doesn't always need to solve problems. Gemini will use Mercury to navigate through life. Gemini rising will use Mercury to navigate through life for its own ends in a lot of ways. But that's not how Virgo works. So you do have to use your intellect. You do have to use Mercury in order to live life every day. But you have to have it be solutions oriented. If you don't have that, right? If you're not coming up with a solution, or you're not coming up with the ability to solve a problem, then there's a tendency for Virgo here to become neurotic and not have an option or an opportunity to work itself out, right? So that's really important. So, and sometimes Virgo risings can be a little bit of a busybody sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, because they feel like they need to do that thing, right? So it's always good to ask if somebody needs help. If you're a Virgo rising, if they say yes, you can just plug right in. But you've got to use your brain, and you have to be able to use it in a way where you are engaged in this analytical relationship with the world around you, so you can make your world better, other people's lives better, right? When that happens, then you're cooking with gas, and you're not trying to be like uber emotional. You're not just trying to force your energy onto the situation, which would be very Mars-like. So understand that, right? You just have to the challenge with Virgo rising is, I think, the criticism, self-criticism that goes along with it, which you don't really have with Gemini rising, because Virgo rising is never quite good enough in a lot of ways. It's a tough one, right? It's a tough one, but still, that's how you get through life. You use your brain, you analyze, and then you navigate and you assist, and it can be really useful that way. Libra rising. Now we're into Venus, and unlike Taurus, which we're really talking about the relationship to the body, that's how Venus works with Taurus. It's the relationship with the body. Here, Libra, it's the relationship with the other. And so that's really important. So with Libra rising, Venus is your ruling planet, but it's a different octave of Venus. And it's about negotiating and finding win-win and being diplomatic and using Venus in a way where life is easier for you and other people. It's pretty simple that way, right? That's how you move through the world, and you create opportunities for yourself by using Libran codes, which are being polite and friendly, and that's what I'm looking for. I think polite and friendly are two good starters. Libra rising always has these codes, like yes, please, no, thank you, excuse me, you're welcome. I mean, Libra rising is great at that, and they should be, because that's part of how you get through the world. That's how you work through things. So, you know, your strategy on an everyday life is to find mutuality with people and to find mutuality in a way where you don't lose yourself. I mean, that's the one thing about Libra Rise. Sometimes you can kind of lose yourself a little bit with it. So you want to find mutuality without just becoming, you know, the other person, right? But if you can do that, again, you're going to make your life just easier. Like, you're not here to be confrontational. You know, you may have confrontation in your relationships because you're dealing with Aries on the 7th house cusp. But with the everyday world, no, you're here to be diplomatic, to build bridges, to build trust, to network with others, and to do it in a way where it's fairly positive, right? You do that with Libra rising, you'll solve 70% of your issues. Trust me. You won't solve everything, but you'll solve a lot. Scorpio is interesting because once we get out to Scorpio rising, we're starting to deal with some of the outer planets now. And they have a very different effect, right? From, you know, what we've been talking about so far has been Mars. We've talked about Mercury. We've talked about Venus. We've talked about the sun. We've talked about the moon. Now we're going to talk about Pluto. Now, sometimes Mars can be a ruling planet of Scorpio rising. I think maybe it is for me because I have Mars in the 8th house, which is Scorpio's house. They call that accidental exaltation. But Pluto is going to be your ruling planet, right? So when we get into these outer signs, dealing with the everyday world is not as easy. It's just not, because you're dealing with bigger energies. So if Pluto is your ruling planet, that means that it's almost like it moves you. You know what I mean? Like, it moves you. You don't move it, it moves you. So as a Scorpio rising, you have to understand that, and you have to become familiar with Pluto and make Pluto an ally, and know that you've gone through probably a number of intense changes in your life, right? Phoenix moments, deaths, transformations. And not everybody in the world is going to like you with Scorpio rising. It's just the way it is. Scorpio rising people can sometimes be very compelling, right? Or repelling. But Pluto is you're always going to operate through Pluto, or Pluto is going to operate through you. So you have to deal with the world through intensity. And you have to deal with the world in a way where you can not be afraid of it, right? That you would court intensity, or you would not shy away from having deep and profound encounters with other people. Like, Scorpio rising people are not superficial people. They generally don't like a lot of small talk. That's not what they'll ask a lot of questions because they're trying to figure you out, but they don't like a lot of small talk. So with Scorpio rising, you have to be able to learn to make Pluto your ally, and not be afraid of it, and navigate your life through Pluto. And there's a lot of intensity and there's a lot of magic there, especially once you understand it. And then Pluto can become a very powerful force in bringing, you know, people, circumstances, and situations into your life that can be very positive. You have to work through a lot of the negativity. You have to work through a lot of the fear and sometimes a lot of the trauma that goes along with being born in Scorpio rising. But once you get through that, then you're dealing with the world on an everyday level that is being governed by Pluto, which is transpersonal, and it is intense. And so you have to make a bond with that. You have to understand that. You have to make an ally of that. And when you do, it's very powerful. In fact, I think Scorpio rising, once people figure out who they are with Scorpio rising, I think it's probably the most powerful rising sign. It's not the easiest, though, by any stretch. Sag rising, your ruling planet is Jupiter. A little bit easier to deal with in some ways, right? Jupiter's a lot of fun. So your approach to life is going to be just philosophical and expansive. And Sag rising people, I'll tell you what, they're not very good planners. They are not good planners. If you talk to a lot of Sag rising people about like their 401ks and stuff like that, they're like, what? What are you talking about? Like, they're just not really wired that way. Sagittarius rising is all about, the moment and freedom and expansion. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's like this inherent faith and trust in life, in God, in the universe, in the self, that things will just work out. And generally, Sag rising, they do. So Jupiter is going to be your strategy. Like, that's how you're going to deal with life, which means that you're going to put your faith in, being expansive and confident, and seeing the best in other people, in situations. It's like, that's what, Sag rising does really well. It's like, the God in me sees the God in you, and, we're learning from each other. It's a philosophical principle, and I'm not going to judge you. And, oh, gee, thanks for not judging me. You're a really cool person to hang out with. Well, thank you very much. Here, let me give you some money. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that's how Sag rising is supposed to operate. So if you're a Sag rising person, your operating principle is Jupiter, which is like, go big or go home. It's just the way it is. Have trust and faith in life, and don't look back. Don't look back. And it's been tough for Sag rising people. When we had this South Node go through Sagittarius, difficult time for them, right? But you're just here. You're here to exhibit faith and live a life that's authentic and truthful. When you do that, your life will work. Unlike the next sign, which is Capricorn. No, not really. Capricorn, you're going to be ruled by Saturn. Look, this is just the way it is, right? You're going to be somebody who's going to be Saturnian. So you've got to have your shit together. You will have your shit together. You were probably born having your shit together in some ways, right? So I think the second hardest rising sign is probably Capricorn, but, and I'll say this, it's also, if you learn it and understand it, it's the easiest rising sign. Because once you get it, and you own it, nobody can ever take it away from you, right? And you will not suffer from lack of discipline or structure or order. That's how you have to live your life. You have to adult. That's just the way it is. Capricorn rising, you got to adult this thing, and you do that. It's it's not always fun. Sometimes you have to take on a lot of responsibility, but at the end of the day, as you get older, things will lighten up, and your life will get easier, and you'll get even younger as you get older. So if you're a Cap rising, you just got to Saturn in your life, man. That's just the way it is. You take on responsibility. If there's no adults in the room, you're the adult in the room, and you do that, and you'll be fine. It's not always fun. It's not always sexy, but in many cases, it'll be recognized, and there could be opportunities that can open up for you. Aquarius, Uranus is going to be your ruling planet. I've seen a lot of Aquarius rising people, and they have strange shit happen to them. Really strange shit, like crazy Uranian stuff. So if you're Aquarius rising, that means that you have to participate with Uranus. You can't get stuck, right? So you're here to be creative, and you're here to shake things up, and you're here to follow your own path. And you do that with Uranus as your ruling planet, and you'll be fine. The challenge, again, is when you deal with like a more conservative sign, let's say Virgo. Let's say you're a Virgo with Aquarius rising. That's not always easy, because Virgo is a conservative sign, but that's not what you're here to learn about. You're here to learn about, well, I got to do something different, right? I got to do something different. I've got to follow the beat of my own drummer. And if an Aquarius rising person can consistently do that and bring Uranian kinds of energy to their everyday life, it can be pretty interesting. And life can be, how do I say this, more chaotically and abstractly supportive than if they just like, tried to be very linear with their lives. So Aquarius rising, take risks. Just take risks, and don't be afraid to shake things up, because shit's going to get shaken up anyway. See, this is what happens when you deal with these outer planets or the outer signs, because then they kind of dictate for you in a lot of ways. It's almost like you're being sort of moved by the gods, but you can still interact with them. You can still have this everyday strategy with life. And then we get to Pisces rising, which is one of the more interesting rising signs. So you're going to be guided by Neptune. That's going to be your ruling planet. And in that case, you have to, I would say, to take a very artistic approach to life, right? Take a very artistic approach to life. Try to live a clean life as much as you can. But with Neptune as your ruling planet, you're gonna be different. You're just going to be different, and life will happen to you in a lot of ways. It's not like Capricorn rising, where you could apply that Saturnian energy and turn your everyday world into a very regimented, very orderly kind of rise to the top. That's not how Neptune works. It's almost like it's faded in a lot of ways. But if you have a creative approach and you have a spiritual approach to everyday life, as a Pisces rising, your life will work better, right? And one of the things I think can be very important with Pisces rising, and it's hard because, when we deal with things like Pisces and Neptune, sometimes limitations are important, but the best thing a Pisces rising person can do is to not be judgmental, right? Try to drop judgment if you're a Pisces rising person. And if you can do that, then you can begin to view your everyday life through a different kind of lens. And you can see your life as kind of this ongoing, evolving sort of creative experiment where, you may become different people at different times in your life, which is what Pisces rising people will do. So, they'll go through phases and shapeshift and wear a lot of different masks, and not always intentionally. Not always intentionally. So, there you go. There's just some tips for just everyday living, because sometimes when we get into astrology, there's so much to process. This is happening here and this is happening. And sometimes just distilling down how you're going to get through life every day can take care of 65 to 70% of your navigational issues. Then the rest you can kind of work out. Hope that was helpful. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Russia. Russia. So here's Russia's chart. And it's the December 25th chart, 5:19 p.m. Moscow. And we've looked at this chart before a number of times. And what's really interesting about this chart is, like, the ascendant, for instance, is Leo, 0 Leo. And we talked about heart and we talked about pride, but we were talking about Leo rising, right? And I'll never forget this story. To me, this spoke to the heart of what I would call the new Russia. And this was when Obama was president and laid a bunch of sanctions on Russia, right? And I was watching this Netflix series on cooks from all around the world. It's a great series. And they had an episode on this young guy from Russia who was a really good chef. And he was working at a restaurant. And as soon as those sanctions came in, the word came down from Moscow that they were to destroy every food item that came from the United States. No exceptions, none. So whether it was, let's say, beef that had come from the United States, or it was, I don't know, cans of corn, they destroyed it all. That's what Moscow said to all the restaurants, grocery stores. Get rid of it. Get rid of it. So, what did they do? Well, they're looking around. And we've got to start using the things that we have now. And so, eventually, what happened is that started this new kind of Russian revolution with cuisine, and they started to use, local fish, local vegetables. Oops, where are we? All right, am I here? So yeah, we're good. And that's what they did. Like they threw down with this austerity, which is the sun in Capricorn. It's like, we're going to be austere. But with Leo rising, they were like, fuck it. We're going to develop character and pride in whatever it is we can come up with. We're not going to let the United States fucking push us around. That's exactly what happened. True story. So with Chiron here in the first house, I was, trying to figure this out. And what are you doing? And one of the things that I think Russia has been kind of good at since Putin came into office is that they don't always appear strong, right? They don't always appear to be strong. And to me, that's like Chiron in the first house. That's like Jackie Chan, the drunken master. Chiron in the first house can appear kind of weak, right? Is that because that's how it appears to the world? Well, look at Russia. They don't have all this money, or they've never really recovered once they, split off from the old Soviet Union, right? That's the cover. That's the cover, but that's not the whole story, really. That's how the world, I think, sees them. Kind of weak, actually, right? But then the energy is very different. We have Moon and Virgo, which I think lends itself to, austerity in a lot of ways. It's an austere moon. You have Jupiter right here in the third house, also in Virgo. So there's this practicality. Like there's a lot of practical energy in this chart. But then you get down here and everything is going to be all driven by outer signs. So obviously this happened during this millennial period, right? 1991, Pluto and Scorpio. So we have Venus-Pluto conjunction. And that means that they have the ability to hang in there and endure a lot. And even with the square to the moon, right? If they needed to endure some level of deprivation or hardship, they could probably do it, which they have. Then you get into some very interesting aspects with Sagittarius, right? Mercury in Sagittarius. We got Mars in Sagittarius, Ceres, Sag. And then you have Pallas. So there's a lot of Sagittarian energy in this Russian chart where there's some freedom, right? We talk about Sagittarius, we're getting into discussions around freedom and truth and authenticity and law. And then there's the international stuff, which clearly is going on. And, right now, Neptune, transiting Neptune, which is right here in Pisces, is squaring Mars, their natal Mars. So we see Neptune here, ninth house, right? That means that the world or forces outside of Russia are in a lot of ways, testing them. It's testing Russia. And I really feel like when I first started looking at this chart a long time ago, it felt to me like this was the chart of a country that wasn't thinking of next year or 10 years from now, 20 years from now. This is a country that's thinking 50 years from now, 100 years from now, right? Especially with all this Capricorn right here, and especially in the sixth house, which it's very unsexy. Very, very unsexy. But if you look at what Putin has done, and I'm not here to be a Putin cheerleader, by the way, just trust me on this, because I don't trust the guy. But if you look at what he's done, is he's instituted the church. So the Russian Orthodox Church has become kind of a big deal again, right? He's done that. As a result of that, he has been attempting to inject moral values into the culture. Now, he's also outlawed any LGBTQ. Like Russia just is not going to go there. They won't tolerate it. They're not into it. And why is that? Well, they're thinking 30 years down the line, 40 years down the line. They're the ones that developed demoralization, right? Look, go back and listen to Yuri Bezmenov, and he talks about how to demoralize a country. You demoralize a country by doing any number. So it takes about a generation to demoralize a country. 30 years, 35 years, you can demoralize a country. That's exactly what they did here. But what Russia's trying to do is something different. They're trying to remoralize their country so that 35 years from now, 40 years from now, 50 years from now, that the children, the generations that are raised, are going to be the children in the generation that are theoretically, poised to be the ruling class of the planet. This is what Russia is doing. You can see it here, right? And even with Saturn in Aquarius, they're looking to the future. They're looking to create a new form. So they're going through their Saturn return, which is kind of interesting. And they're, being theoretically challenged by the rest of the world. So to me, this is a very interesting chart. And it's a chart that, and I've gone through this before, they're really working on two main areas. They're working on children, right? The fifth house. They're laying the groundwork for their children. And they're using all this Capricornian, kind of strict, kind of, statist energy in order to enact the laws, the rules, the everyday, order and discipline that can somehow theoretically protect these children. I mean, this is what this chart is about to me. This is a chart that's based on not now, not next week, next year, but say by 2040, right? That's what these people are shooting for. So what was interesting, as far as the war stuff goes, they've got Aries on the midheaven, right? So they're always going to have some degree of conflict. This is the way it is. It's like they've got to, deal with this conflict. And they have Chiron at the top of their chart. Now, what Chiron's going to do is it's going to come in and it's going to start to trine all their Sagittarian planets, which means that they'll be on top of the conflict. Strategically, they will have the upper hand in any conflict. I can tell you that right now, because of the position of Chiron in relationship with all these Sag planets. Easy. Let's see, Chiron is here, and it's squaring Russia's true node. So they're being forced to grow. That's what's happening as well. So this is a very, very interesting chart. Now, I did the progress chart, and in the progress chart, the progressed Russian chart, Russia is a progressed Aquarian Sun Saturn conjunction. So when we had that super conjunction in Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius on the 21st of December in 2020, right? That was right on Russia's progressed Sun, which means that the next 20 years, where we see that conjunction being played out, very big for Russia. Very, very big. And I will go on record and I will say that whatever happens, with Russia, the United States, China, Russia is going to come out on top of this period of time. You can just see it in their chart. Like they've got a long-term plan and a long-term goal. And with that super conjunction taking place on their progressed Sun, which is, I think, at 2 degrees Aquarius, it's a big deal. Very big deal. Now, what's also interesting is that I think China is a 2 degrees Aquarius rising. So that Jupiter-Saturn conjunction took place on China's ascendant. I would say that both countries are going to be big players over the next 20 years. I don't think that would be too hard of a stretch. But of the two, I think Russia is probably chart-wise primed to have the longest and most enduring legacy based on all that Capricorn in the 6th house and just doing the grunt work in order to build the foundation for, this next generation of children that they're trying to raise. And while everybody else is getting demoralized, Russia is like, no, we're going to be raising the ruling class for the next 30 to 40 years. So what's going to happen in the interim? Well, if they take them off swift, I think we've got things happening real fast. Real fast. That means that we could see, market crash. We could see some cyber hacking with, because the Russians are pretty good hackers. And don't count the Israelis out too, because they're in the mix. And they could throw their energy any way they want, right? They can get behind anybody. So and it could happen very quickly. Very, very quickly. So if you start to hear rumblings about the SWIFT stuff, you should probably pay attention to it because it's pretty important. And things could get fairly kinetic fairly quickly. All right. Let's see, where are we? I'm about ready to cut out of here. Here we go. Viteo said that they will insist on gold payment for gas. Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Wendy says we need to be concerned with Israel. Yeah, I mean, Israel is sort of the, you know, what's the motto of the Mossad? By deceit, thou shalt, what is it? Thou shalt rule or something like that. Wendy says Edgar Casey predicted that Russia will become a shining example for the world. Well, Russia doesn't allow GMO products. Now they're smart. I mean, they have a long-term plan and goal. You could see it in their chart, right? They know exactly what they're doing. They're not playing. You know, we're so fucked up here because we allowed our leadership to just completely and utterly hypnotize us. And for a lot of people, they just have not been on the ball. But by the way, Russia's helped out with that a little bit too. Don't think that they haven't been involved. They have absolutely been involved. But you know, right now we're just, you know, we're just trying to, you know, hope like hell there's toilet paper on the shelves in 2 months. I mean, some people are. You know, Obama spent time in Russia. Do you know the story about Obama in Russia? So there was this pretty well-known story about, well, it wasn't well, it was going around the internet for a while. And this guy was an American businessman. And he was over in Russia. And he was at a dinner. And this woman was there. And I guess she was the wife of one of the guys he was doing business with. And she was kind of shit-faced. And she started to talk about this guy that the Russians had been training to become president of the United States. And that he was actually there in Russia at that time. And he was learning from them. And she said that he was very charismatic. And then she laughed. And she said, and guess what? I think she used these terms. He's a darky. That's right. He's black. And we're going to put America's first black president into office. And she started like cackling, right? So he believes that she was talking about Obama. And that makes total sense. It makes total sense. You know, when you go back and look at when Obama would go to Russia, he and Medvedev were very tight. He and Medvedev were very friendly. Like they knew each other. Like they knew each other. So, you know, we talked about the Manchurian Candidate at the beginning of the show. I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't insert Barack Obama's name into that category as a Manchurian Candidate, 100%, right? So it's not like Russia hasn't contributed to our situation. Oh, they have, for sure. But they're on a different path now. And unfortunately, we're here to try to pick up the pieces. All right. That's it. Thanks for being here. Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure to hang out with you on a Sunday night. You can find me at robertphoenix.com if you'd like to book a reading. And have yourself a great week. I really appreciate all of you. And I might have a special guest this week. I might have a special guest drop by the studio this week. We'll see. We'll see. You guys might enjoy it. All right. Use your head in order to discern what's real. Your heart to save what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Love to each and every one of you. Take care.